Live from the Pentland, this is Star Wars, the battle for Saturday night. Now, please welcome the dancing sensations of 2012, Pudsey and Ashley.
Hello there. Good morning. Good morning and welcome to the Battle for Saturday Night Television. Mark, it's a terrible shame to have to follow Ashley and Pudsey.
I think it's a privilege to be on the same stage, and I actually touched Pudsey. So it's, my day's already been made.
Well, many congratulations, Mark. I suppose, Elaine, is that what Britain's Got Talent's all about for you, is it? Discovering talent like that?
Sorry?
Is that what Britain's Got Talent is all about? Is that a sort of quintessential Britain's Got Talent act?
It's a great act and doing very well. We had a really good range of acts this year. So, you saw Jonathan and Charlotte there as well. These shows only work if you have good talent. So we were very pleased with the lineup that we had this year.
So, there's a lot to talk about here. Boyd, it's always nice to share a panel with you.
Thanks for
saying that for the record. Mark. We saw a clip from The Voice in that package there. That was obviously a big decision by the BBC to take on The Voice, and it started very well and had very good ratings. It had I think it was the biggest entertainment launch in a decade or so. And then the ratings dropped off.
Yeah.
I mean, really quite dramatically, didn't they? First of all, why did the BBC want to do a singing contest?
Well, we've had a tradition of doing singing talent shows from Fame Academy to obviously the Andrew Lloyd Webber series. We decided we'd had a good run with Andrew, and we didn't want to do a singing show that was trying to find a particular type of person. And we wanted to do a singing show which broadened the talent base, that was open to people of all abilities and shapes and sizes. So we were looking for a format that would reflect that. And we were in discussions about The Voice because it had this great format twist, which was the blind auditions.
But there isn't the issue there that the blind auditions are terrific, and the spinny chair thing, I don't know if that's how you refer to it, but it works really well. And then, of course, as the show goes on, you lose the spinny chair thing, and you lose viewers as well. But Boyd, I know that we've discussed this point on Radio 5 Live pretty much every single Monday afternoon. Is it true that in America as well, that when The Voice went out, when they lost the spinny chair, they lost the viewers?
To some extent. I think it varies, though. I think it's not always the case. I think, it kind of goes up and down a lot all around the world, as far as I can make out, looking at various ratings, that certainly the spinning chair section, that first bit of the format, it's like a brilliant premise, isn't it? It's like, I would compare it to a film where the first act of The Voice, as a structured story, narrative, to use that pompous word, is brilliant. And you're like, yep, they can't see them sing, it's fantastic. I don't know what they're like, the brilliant drama of them turning, everything about it is perfect. It's just that, inherent to the format, is how do, from then on, it's just a bit like all the others. And that's just inherent in that. And it's almost like seeing film and
But
turning.
that's true, isn't it? Once you got rid of the spinning chair, it's just like all the others.
Yeah, I think that's fair comment. It was the first series. The bit that worked really, really well and above our expectations was the blind auditions. It was that device of the turning chairs, the real jeopardy. I mean, you use the word narrative, but it gives that narrative. That's not the only thing to it. There was great talent on display. There's also fantastic performances from the coaches, and that chemistry which helped. But yeah, I think it was a first series. It went through the roof. We were delighted with that, but we've learned a lot from it. And certainly, it's not rocket science to say that the blind auditions were the best bit of the series.
So you started, it was a great big launch, and even for the series average, it was a great number, wasn't it? I think the series average was still 9 million.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, Mark. You say you've learned lessons. What are the lessons, and so for the next series, are you going to find a way to somehow keep the blind auditions in most of the episodes?
Yes.
You are?
Yes.
Oh, that's interesting.
We will be doing less live shows. I think it's true, and I think the Andrew Lloyd Webber series proved this as well. That those live shows, the audience have become over familiar with that grammar. Yeah. I think it still works on the brand leaders, which are Britain's Got Talent, X Factor, and Strictly. But I think the audience has become over familiar with it. They know what's coming. There's no surprises. It's very, very predictable. And I think the challenge for us, for Lane and I and Shu and all independent suppliers, is to find the next thing.
Sorry, I will come to you guys in a moment. Don't worry, I'm not ignoring you. I'm just interested that you're going to keep the turning chair right up through much of the series, because that's quite hard to pull off, because you'd have to, they have to not know the contestants, otherwise the spinny chair doesn't work. So does that mean it's one great big audition all the way up until the final?
We'll let you know.
I
I don't want to give it all away. No, it'll be fine.
Okay.
It'll be fine. Trust me.
It's good to hear.
It'll work. No, but seriously, it's. We were worried about the live shows, because they did tail off in other territories.
Yeah.
But we were delighted with the success of the blind auditions. We did not anticipate to get the success we did, and it's what we crave for is a show that brings audiences together on a Saturday night and is talked about, for better or worse, by the nation, and The Voice achieved that.
Siobhan Green, you are head of television at Psycho, and you're about, I think in October, you're off to work at ITV Studios as well. What was the feeling within Psycho about this show, The Voice, and about the BBC's decision to broadcast it? I seem to remember hearing Simon Cowell on the Today programme talking about it. Did you hear that? I mean, didn't he basically said, it's once you've got rid of the spinny chair bit, it's just like our shows.
I think I sort of agree with everything that you said about the spinning chairs and that being the sort of top, the hook of the show. For me, I think it did two things for us. I think competition is brilliant, and actually that, in a way, really focused our minds as well. So there's a lot to be said for that. I think we produced a series that was even better maybe than we would have done.
Because of The Voice?
Because you had real competition, and we
it was
needed
good?
to be the best.
Did Psycho think The Voice, as made by the BBC, was a good show?
I thought that the opening part of the show is terrific. I think what the Voice has got to do, which is what we've got to do on BGT or X Factor, is you've got to find a star at the end of it. That's the most important thing, because it validates the process. That's what's so important.
And are you saying you don't think they found a star?
Well, I don't think stars come out the series this year, and I think that's what you need. I'm talking about talent, punters. That's what you need to find. That's why, when you've got a band like One Direction, who have become the biggest boy band in the world now, then that validates the process.
But then
you have
the
to
X
find
Factor's
them.
had loads of series, hasn't it, with people who haven't gone on to become stars. Can anyone name the winner of?
Well, Zy Bennett couldn't yesterday.
But I think
Yes,
Leanne was the winner, and she has.
Leanne, what's her surname?
Leanne, wonderful singer with a fabulous voice.
That Leanne.
It is not the case. It is not the case that stars may not come out of it. You know, it doesn't have to be the winner.
But you really don't know.
I can't remember, Richard. I had a late night last night.
So no, of course, but that's true. The X Factor happened many times with the X Factor. Is there, Elaine? What was the view from ITV of the Voice? Because you bid, didn't you? I mean, you bid to.
Yeah, we were talking to them about it coming to ITV because we thought it was a very commercial proposition. I mean, I think it's quite a commercial show. You know, we would have, I mean, in the end, these shows are about finding a star and having a record contract, and Universal are very locked into that show. And so we would have participated in those revenues. So that, which of course the BBC can't do, but you know, for us, that was potentially quite a valuable commodity for us. So we were quite interested in having it. I mean, I think Shu's point is absolutely the key point. As I said earlier, you know, these shows only survive if you find talent. And you know, Susan Boyle, in a way, is what The Voice needs. I mean, that's the premise of having your back turned to the singer, presumably, that you don't know what they look like. And, you know, Susan Boyle came out of BGT, that, you know, it's not, there's sort of something slightly wrong with the premise of The Voice. It's not true that all these shows are only about the way that you look and styled. And, you know, Susan Boyle is the biggest star to have come out of any of these shows anywhere in the world. And she came out of BGT.
So you think The Voice is fundamentally a flawed format?
Well, I mean,
Why
I'm
would
sure
you bid
Mark's,
for it, Elaine? Why would you bid for it?
because it was going to be a commercial. It was going to be quite a commercial show for us, and better to have it. You know, we found us. We knew where we were going to schedule it. We found a space for it that.
But it would still have contained that what you think is a flaw. If you think the spinny chair thing is a flaw, you would have had that in the show. So why were you bidding for something that you think didn't really work?
Well, I think we would have. There was a slight change to it that we were thinking of doing.
What's that?
I'm not going to talk about it.
Getting rid of the chairs.
It would give away too many.
Stop the chairs spinning.
But
you would be able to see them and not hear them.
But I think Shu's right. You know, the competition. You know, it is the battle that was earlier in this year on Saturday nights between BG. I mean, it was extraordinary numbers of people who were sitting down and watching both shows. I mean. Britain's Got Talent averaged 11 million, The Voice averaged 9. I mean, that's an incredible amount of people who are sitting down watching the main terrestrial channels in the UK. That's a really kind of extraordinary phenomenon, and it's fantastic news for television.
It's a real positive, and I think we should, you know, celebrate that and to look at the, you know, what the entertainment business is doing in this country.
Do you think the press overplayed the kind of decline in ratings
Of course. You know, I think they overplayed the rivalry between ITV and BBC, as they always do. You know, it fills column inches. We all know that. It's part of the game we're in now. You know, I mean...
but I can assure you that BBC Press tweeted gleefully when The Voice got a great start and they would, you know, getting more and more excited about the ratings. Well, fair enough, because it was the biggest entertainment launch for 10 years or whatever. So the idea that it's all the press and not actually BBC Press office, you know, and your publicists that are kind of cheerleading for that would be ridiculous. So it's not just the press that are seizing upon. And I think and it's interesting because once the BBC goes down that road of competing with ITV in a very, very big mainstream way and championing the fact that we are going to take on Britain's Got Talent, whatever, and then getting really excited when they have a ratings victory about it, you then can't kind of be annoyed when the ratings decline a lot, and the press is still dealing with that story. And suddenly,
I don't
of course, all the tweets
think we went out there and said we're going to take on BGT, because at the time we didn't think we were going to take on BGT. You know, we thought we were going out 3 weeks or 4 weeks before BGT. So I don't think our position was we're going to take, you know, one of the biggest shows in entertainment history on.
Was it a tense time internally though when the ratings went down and there was this narrative in the press of, you know, BGT is now beating The Voice? And was it internally the BBC? But there must have been quite a lot of concern about that.
Well, not particularly, in that we always expected that the ratings would dip from the blind auditions, because in other territories that had been the case, in some other territories. But we were still thrilled with the ratings. You know, you cannot be anything but positive when you've got a show that peaks at 12.5 million.
It's said, I don't know whether you agree with this, Boyd, that on The Voice they didn't have what are called the sob stories so much. There was less focus on that. I think that was part of the premise. Was that true?
No. I mean, part of the problem with The Voice, and I think you've almost got to separate the actual show from the way it was marketed and promoted and and all of that. And part of the kind of, I don't know if this was taken at the highest level of the producers and marketing and whatever, but it was certainly sold to the public via us and press and all of that as the alternative to the X Factor, credible acts, authenticity, singer-songwriters, nothing to do with what they look like. All this stuff was kind of how it was championed, and no sob-stories like they have to do on the X Factor and all that. And of course, all of that is kind of what makes talent shows popular. So I think part of the problem for me was always, why are you defining yourself by saying we're not like these most popular shows on TV, which everyone loves and are brilliant? We're going to be different. Well, actually, the thing that's brilliant about The Voice is kind of what is a bit similar to the huge ones anyway, that it's the excitement and the tension and the drama and the narrative and all that. So, and I still think the show was great, certainly for that first chunk. And it wasn't because it was, the acts were credible. They were as credible as they are on the X Factor and Britain's Got Talent. They just had the spinning chairs. So that was an issue for me, that they kept pounding away at this thing. And I guess if it had been on ITV, they wouldn't have bothered with that. They wouldn't have started going on about, we're credible, we're authentic, all of that.
But Boyd, you say they just had the spinning chairs. I mean, I think the trick of a successful Saturday night format is to keep it traditional, in a sense, but to have a format twist or format mechanism, or it could be a talent at the heart of it, so it lands itself in familiar ground, but there's something about it which is fresh and new. You know, that is a real innovation, and that's what the spinning chairs gave us. That
was a brilliant bit, but it wasn't. That was brilliant.
You know,
but it wasn't that they had a singer-songwriter who's credible because they happen to be a singer-songwriter, which of course you might get on the X Factor or BGT anyway. That was the weird thing, that yes, it was a spinning chair excitement, but it wasn't because they were, in quotes, credible. I mean, you know, that word kept coming up all the time. Who cares, you know?
Well, sure. Let me ask you this. Over at Psycho, you love a sob story, right? I mean, you know, you can't get enough of them. Did you think that... do you think that was a mistake to reduce those? Because I guess in the end, people are interested in people, and they're interested in human stories. They're probably not that bothered about just how well a stranger can actually sing. Are those stories really, in the end, at the very heart of the success of these shows?
I think so, yeah. I do. Well, I think it's a combination of lots of things, but I think that the idea of how somebody's got to that audition and why they've come, and I know people want to label them sob stories, but to me, they're just... we don't tell sob stories, we just tell the story. And people's stories are absolutely amazing, and I'm always struck by the fact that if you ask the right question, it's unbelievable what people will tell you about their lives, and it's an opportunity. I know it's easy to be cynical, but it is a chance to change your life, and things can really happen, can really change for people who do well on on all of these shows, and that is to be celebrated, because there's not many ways out of it. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, there's not a lot of ways to get out of it. You go, well, win the lottery, have a great education, but come to a show like this, and you know what? It might just happen. And it might not be, like you say, with Susan. Who'd have thought a dog had won it? It's brilliant. and she was on a plane with Simon, and, you know, I'm going to Los Angeles, and you go, why knock that? I think it's fantastic. And all we've ever done, definitely, I know from myself, because I'm in there doing it, is for us, we tell the story. And obviously we want to tell the story in the most compelling way possible. And then sometimes stories just come, and you can't even begin to imagine it, because it's just there.
The story's more important than the singing in a lot of ways.
No, I think you can't have one without the other in terms of if they're going to be really successful later on in the show. You've got to. It can't just be this. It doesn't sustain. But people are interested in that. That's obviously a great hook. Like anybody, when you meet anybody, you talk to somebody, find out, they're quite interesting, but then other things.
How do you get those stories out of them? What's the process when they turn up to the audition?
I think it's everybody's spoken to
by a producer.
Yeah, everybody's talked to, and I mean it's a big complicated machine operation.
What sort of questions do they ask them?
Well, you ask anything, Richard. You can ask what you like. Well, in that people tell you things, I ask the questions. Sometimes you just ask what you feel. Sometimes, and people will just tell you things. Sometimes people have come to the auditions and they've wanted to present things, and then very often people don't necessarily come saying what they want to say, but that sort of comes out of it.
But essentially you sit them down and you look for tragedy in their
No,
background.
we don't. We do not, no.
Elaine, was it a mistake for the BBC to minimise those sob stories in The Voice?
Oh, look, yes, probably, because I think in the end you didn't sort of feel that you were really emotionally engaged with them, I think. And I do think, you know, Psycho and Talkback Thames, who make X Factor and BGT, have brilliantly over the years crafted those. And but you know, Shu's quite right. You can't have the story without the talent. I mean, the talent is the really important thing. And in the end, we put the decision about who wins these competitions in the hands of the viewers. So, and they, you know, viewers take that role quite seriously, and you know they always do vote for somebody who they, you know, they really want to see make it and who they think has got talent. I mean, and so they, you know, that's the most important thing.
And what happens on the telly, Richard, I just want to say, like, what happens when the judges meet the contestants, Simon, everything, they're not briefed. He doesn't know what, we might say, oh, ask them about a job or something, but they know nothing. They've just got the name and their age.
But sometimes you feed the judge a question to ask when they walk out in front of them.
Only sometimes, like, if there's maybe something about a job or something, but in the main, they ask all the questions, because otherwise it's not a real conversation. If it's all produced, it's not coming, it doesn't feel real. And I think it's got to feel, it has to be authentic, because the viewer at home, they can feel that when they're being worked. They're not going to like it. Yeah. So for me, it's got to be authentic in the conversations. Simon is just, he's the master of it. He can just ask the great questions, and you know, the conversations happen.
So this session is called The Battle for Saturday Night Telly, and we talked, Mark and Elaine, about essentially, you know, the ratings for these shows are fundamentally good. You know, The Voice overall, 9 million, it's a really good number. And you're saying there's a lot to celebrate between ITV and BBC and the amount of people that are getting Saturday night. But there is still a very real rivalry there.
Yeah, but I think it's a healthy rivalry. I mean, Shu and her teams tell those stories brilliantly. You know, they have set the bar of those backstories and the telling of those stories. And that's something that's evolved.
Will you put more of them in the next series?
I think we will tell them better. But the point I'm trying to make is that's something that's evolved.
Yeah,
that skill has evolved.
And it wasn't at the beginning. It was done in a very different way as well, Matt. Like when we were going to do the show in America, X Factor in America, we went back and we watched the first series of X Factor in the UK. When I watched it, it was like watching a documentary because there was no. There was no. You know, things have evolved, as you say, and how we tell those stories. And actually, what we did this year on BGT, we made a conscious decision to. It was something that Simon really wanted to do, and I think it's been fantastic. Which is we showed. I think the hand of the producer. I think we slightly came back with the camera, and a lot of the filming that we did, you saw people telling their story, but not in the traditional way where you're in a holding room and you're being interviewed. People's personalities came out through waiting in the queue, having a bag of crisps, eating a sausage roll. All of those things, which obviously are great ways of how you judge somebody, but you know what I mean? Like how that happened, I think that we were able to sort of reveal people's personalities and characters that it didn't in slightly different ways. I think that it was more revealing as well.
I mean, we had a device with the coaches on The Voice, which was, you know, camera came back and you would get their asides. You felt you're getting something that wasn't produced because it wasn't produced.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah,
but I think my point is that we learn from each other, and the people who benefit are the viewers. You know, we will look at the X Factor and the backstories and how you tell them, and I think, God, you know, you've upped the game, so we will respond. And
I think it's harder for the BBC, I have to say, though, because I think the BBC cannot have, for example, imagine like Jedward or Wagner, you know, on a show, a BBC talent show on Saturday night. I think there would be kind of, you know, the public would be up in arms, well, not the public, but the press certainly, and the media would be kind of up in arms, and they'd get a lot of criticism if they kind of celebrated that kind of act. You know what I mean?
Is that true?
I think it depends on the show. You know, it depends. You know, the Voice was about The Voice. That's how we teed it up. It depends on the show. If it's a different variety show, if we were to bring back Opportunity Knocks, there might be a place for Jedward or Wagner.
Are you bringing back Opportunity Knocks?
We're not bringing back Opportunity Knocks, but if we were, there might be. You know, it depends on the shape and tone of the show.
But in general, I think that's just I think ITV can, you know, in the incredibly exciting, entertaining way, can milk every element of the X Factor and BGT. All of these things, the sub-stories, the joke acts, as I would call them, you know, the ones that can't really sing.
More comfortably than the BBC
Much more comfortably, much easier than the BBC, I think, in general.
I think wit and humour is a really important element of X Factor and BGT, and I think, you know, it comes from the acts, it comes from the way it's edited, it comes from the judges, and actually, I suppose, I mean, I think The Voice took itself quite seriously, and I think, you know, that was a quite striking difference between the shows.
Too seriously?
Well, look, it just was a fact. I mean, I think it had a sort of sense of quite self-importance, I think, about it.
Mark?
It definitely had a sense of purpose.
Did it have a sense of self-importance?
No, I don't think so at all. I mean, it had a sense of purpose which was to concentrate on The Voice. It wanted to distinguish itself from other talent shows, and I think it did that. Listen, we're talking about a first series. Yeah. You know, I think if you go back to the first series of The X Factor, certainly Strictly, you know, it's a very different thing than series.
Wouldn't you like to be untrammeled, not worry about, you know, everyone having a go about public service broadcasting and, you know, and not kind of almost compromise the pure entertainment level you can have on a team, and just not worry about all that. And I always feel the BBC is slightly constrained. Would you just like to cast all that aside and just do whatever the hell you want to do with this?
But I don't think we are. I mean, Elaine and I commissioned a show called Hole in the Wall, you know, which I don't know where the public service value was
Sadly
in that.
missed.
But and Total Wipeout, you know, we do commission shows that have no public service value other than to entertain, which is a public service value. So I don't feel that constraint. It's just you want to deliver a show that is distinctive from other shows in the genre.
By the way, if you go on, watching the first series of the X Factor back is fascinating because it's all on YouTube, and it's fundamentally different, isn't it? In the final of X Factor these days, all the judges sort of get behind all the acts and are very nice to them. If you watch the first series back, I think it's Sharon and Steve Brookstein, and she shouldn't even be here. Shouldn't even be here. I wanted to ask you about Simon Cowell's obviously enormously competitive individual. You worked very closely at Psycho. When The Voice launched and it was beating Britain's Got Talent and it was doing very well, how was Simon?
Focused. I was eating chicken pie at his house 3 times a week. We're watching the shows, editing the shows. I mean, he's focused. He's focused.
Does he get wound up? Does he get nervous?
No, nervous. No, I wouldn't say he got nervous. I would just say it did it for all of us, Richard. It focused the mind, and that's a good thing. And I think competition is healthy and strong, and it. So
but tell us why, because this is really interesting. So Britain's Got Talent The Voice launches, great big ratings, beating Britain's Got Talent. So you go around to his house for chicken pie. Chicken pie.
Yeah.
So you make the chicken pie.
No, Brenda makes the chicken pie.
And so Brenda's I don't know who Brenda is, but yeah, Brenda's chicken pie. And is he there? What's he like? Is he going? This is, you know, what we're going to do? That we're being beaten.
No. He wasn't doing that at all. We were in a process. We've shot all the shows. We shot all the auditions. So ultimately, we're editing the shows when the shows are going out. We didn't. I don't think we changed anything that we did. But I think all we had was we just had a keen sense that we needed to keep our foot on the gas and our focus and our concentration. And I felt like.
Does the order changes at that point?
No. Well, it changes all the time anyway, because we're always sort of feeling how the show's gonna, what you want from the show each week. But no, I think all it did was, it just heightened the sense of what we wanted to do, and I think what Elaine was saying about, you know, our sort of maybe either consciously or unconsciously, I think we were definitely thinking, you know, our humour, the relationship with David, all of those things just felt really great things for our show as well. I think the shows have worked because I think we just they did have it did this year. It had a great sense of humour. It had great characters. I think we did some really new things. I think we evolved it in terms of the way that we told a lot of the stories and the way that we shot it, definitely, in the way that we did some of the reality and everything. So. Yeah. Okay,
let's talk about the return of the X Factor, which came back last Saturday, didn't it? Boyd, what were the ratings?
I think did it get about 8.89 million?
It peaked at 10 and averaged 8.9.
Okay. And that was down, as I understand it. Was that down a couple of million on the launch last year?
Down $1 million, I think, on the launch
It's down
last
$1 million.
year. Yeah.
Are you worried about that, Elaine?
No. Hottest day of the year. Still a sort of, I think, possibly a slight aftermath of the Olympics. So no, I mean, you know, it's X Factor is on for a lot of weeks of the year. You know, we are just at the beginning. You know, we're in year 9, and last year we had a very good year. I mean, to peak at 10 million on the hottest day of the year in the middle of August is, you know, that's a great result for us.
Boyd, do you agree? Is that a great result?
I think it was a great result. I think I'm sure ITV were disappointed. I'm sure that they were all tearing their hair out. That was the hottest day of the year, and they were like, "Oh my God, you know, no one's going to come back from their barbecues." But I'm sure it is disappointing. I think the interesting thing will be, you know, this tomorrow to see what happens. You know, everyone will be. I mean, it must be a nightmare being an ITV executive when everyone, you know, every newspaper is completely obsessed with the overnights for these shows, you know, and it's a great, it's like a, you know, it's a free story because every week for the rest, from now until the middle of December, you've got a great story monitoring the ratings of the X Factor. I mean, that's it in itself. You've got front pages, you know.
Yeah,
Is it an
it would
Elaine?
be quite nice to have a quiet Sunday morning.
I think though, as the programme makers though, Richard, we've just got to get on and make the show.
Yes,
if you start worrying about the blooming ratings, and I don't need the ratings ever to tell me whether the show's good or not. If I love the show, I love the show.
I know, but you live or die by the ratings. It's about the ratings.
I know it is, but it's not, if you know what I mean, in terms of making the show. You put your head down and you still make the show, and you defend that show and you love that show, whether it's doing whatever it's doing. And I would just say, like what Elaine said about it's this X Factor, it is a marathon, and I wasn't disappointed. I've got to say, when you're watching it at home on last Saturday, I had to sort of force myself to come inside. It was absolutely boiling, you know. So you didn't want to be inside necessarily, but I've got no doubt that the show will continue. You know, it's 9 series, Richard.
Yeah,
you know, you've got to think to yourself, hang on a minute, this is amazing. They're still
look,
doing it after 9 series.
The good news about X Factor this year is that we had a really good audition tour. So I think everybody feels one of the best ever. So the talent coming through is because, you know, there's always this debate about how much talent is left for all these shows. You know, can you keep finding new stars? But I mean, actually, we've definitely had one of our best years. So there are some great acts coming through.
But here's the thing, and it may well be. I mean, absolutely, it may just be down to the weather. And look, there's still good numbers, but there is a danger, isn't there, that audiences are just getting a little bit tired of these formats. In America, American Idol, the recent series of American Idol was down 30% year on year. Now, 30%, that's a massive drop. I mean, you must be, Elaine, just at least a bit concerned that just maybe audiences are tired of this format.
Well, there's no evidence of it here yet. I mean, no show here has dropped 30%. I mean, you know, we look quite carefully at what's going on in America, and you know, they have the Idol, they have X Factor, and they have The Voice. So we look at it quite, you know, from a kind of interested point of view. But I have to say, you know, last year, X Factor was, I think, the 3rd highest rating series of its 9-year history. So, you know, there's no evidence that that's...
Look at BGT,
the
Richard, this year. I mean, it was like with David there. It had a whole, and Leisha. I mean, it had a whole new lease of life.
No, I know that.
You know what I mean?
No, absolutely know that. I'm just saying it is. I don't
but
know.
That's but I think, Richard, that's the challenge.
Yeah.
That's what makes it. That's like getting to the top is brilliant. Staying at the top is really hard. It's harder work, and there's a pressure with that. But I feel like that's the creative challenge, because you've got the audience, and when the audience loves something, you've got to. I think they want to keep loving it. Of course they do. They don't want to fall out of loving it. I don't think necessarily the audience want to love X Factor, The Voice, like they want to, and we just, it's our sense, our duty, our responsibility making the show to keep them entertained. And these things can evolve.
And of course,
you know.
of course I understand that. But
Yeah,
you do take my point, don't you?
I think inevitably
Yeah.
they will start tailing off at some point. I mean, who knows when that will be? And you know, it's our job to try and find the next thing. You know, but Shu, it's producers like Shu who keep innovating these formats and keep them at the top. which they do an incredible job. I mean, we had a difficult year 3 years ago with Strictly Come Dancing, and everyone was sort of saying, right, well, is this the beginning of the end?
Yeah.
But it was some excellent production skills that brought it back up.
Well, I think that's interesting. Well, I don't think they are in decline. I think it's cyclical, and I think in fact the American Idol example is interesting because actually, I watched quite a lot of that series, and it just wasn't a great series of American Idol. And it's the detail of it that matters. It is who are the judges, what are the acts like, and it's always going to be the way with these formats. They're like soap operas. It's like some years EastEnders is shit. Other years it's brilliant, and that is reflected in the ratings. And I don't think any of these shows, I still think these shows are the most popular programmes on TV still, as a group, and I include Strictly in that. And a lot of pompous people like to think, oh, they're going to be, finally, X Factor down a bit last week, that's proof that, we suddenly only care about Olympians, and we only care about people with real, whatever that is, talent who've worked, all this rubbish that people say, actually, I'm sure this week it'll be higher, and I'm sure come, in a few weeks' time, it will still be by far the most popular show on TV. Because people love these shows, and people don't like to accept that, but there is something about these shows as a group that is incredibly compelling and exciting and event-like. And I don't think that will decline at all for a long time.
And I think that the names are a brand, because actually, what is the X Factor? Well, that show for us as producers, we own that format, Simon owns that format, we can make that. It can be anything it needs to be. That's a brand. So it's not like the show should necessarily tail off. I think that we just evolve it and it moves on, and providing we're doing that and still looking at it and looking at every aspect and trying to bring it back even better and more creative, interesting ways of doing it, then I don't see why it should.
Let's talk about a couple of other Saturday night shows. Superstar for one, Elaine, which is the ITV show where they were searching for Jesus, and I know it's but
and we found him.
Did you find enough viewers?
Well, we averaged, I think, 4 million in the middle of the summer. It was a strip show, which was quite a kind of bold scheduling decision, so it was on every night. And, I mean, actually, I thought it was a really good show. I thought the production values were fantastic. It was produced by ITV Studios, and I thought done really well. I thought the judges, Dawn French was fantastic. But it didn't do huge numbers.
Were you disappointed with those numbers?
We were a little disappointed with them. But it was in the heat of the summer, the heart of the summer, and I think it was quite an unusual time to do those kinds of shows. But again, we have found a brand new piece of talent who has had no professional experience, who is going to star in the biggest rock opera, he's going to be performing in the O2 at the end of September and then across arenas. I mean, he's an amazing discovery. And it was quite interesting on that show because there were, a bit like on The Voice, there were some people who had got professional experience or record contracts or had been on the West End stage already. But actually, of the 3 finalists, 2 of them, so this is the public's decision, had put through the 2 who had absolutely no experience at all. So it was a raw, undiscovered talent in the end.
It's an interesting case study, I guess, because essentially this show, a version of the show, has appeared on the BBC. These Andrew Lloyd Webber search for West End stars, Boyd, and where they performed really well.
And the BBC came in for a lot of criticism for kind of basically having an extended advert for Andrew Lloyd Webber's latest shows, which I think was completely misguided because they were entertaining shows. I think I really missed the Graham Norton Lloyd Webber kind of interaction, which was a great part of those shows. I'm not slagging anything off, but I just think that was missing. I think the Stripped Across the Link was a disaster, was a complete mistake. I think the only show that Stripping Across the Link works for is Britain's Got Talent, because it builds up to the semi-finals and the final, and it works brilliantly. I'm
a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here works brilliantly.
Oh yeah, so that's the other one. But for Superstar and for a few other things they've tried it with, where it's basically just the same thing every night. It's too much.
It's just
too much. You just want it once a week. Red or black, disaster. You just want it once a week.
We'll come on to that. The scheduling was a mistake, Elaine?
No, I think, what we were trying to do was we were trying to give the audience a sort of blast of entertainment before the Olympics started, because we knew we would have a quiet time during the Olympics. And we didn't have enough Saturday nights to do the whole series across Saturday nights, so we decided to try and do it like that. I mean, the stripping these entertainment shows, I think, began with Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, which was a brilliant commissioning decision. And, it did fantastically well. And, but of course, because you're on a competition and there's a rollover. There was a kind of continuing narrative story. And you sort of, you know, that's what we hoped would happen with Superstar, that you would get into the... But of course, it presents a lot of challenges with a talent show, because actually they don't have time to improve. They can't go off and kind of rehearse. You know, their song choices are all pre-decided. So you don't get the same sense of progression that you get if you put it over Saturday night. So, but actually that was the only way we could do it we could get it into the schedule.
Mark, did you think that ITV did Superstar well?
I think it's a really bold decision to strip it across the week. It's really hard to produce that type of show live each night under that sort of pressure. I think it's really, really hard to do that. I think it did miss Graham. I think it missed that wit and charm that Graham gave it and the relationship with Andrew Lloyd Webber. But it was a bold thing to do, but it just didn't quite come off.
Will you do another one?
Well, it came off for Andrew. I mean, he's found a great star, and, you know, it'll be really interesting to see how the show does. And I thought the notion of it being a kind of rock opera, and, you know, they were singing kind of rock songs, and it felt like a much kind of bigger, bolder show.
Would you do another one in that vein? Would you do another show like that?
Yeah, I possibly. I mean, we're not talking about doing one at the moment, but I don't think we'd be against doing another one.
Now, Red or Black. Red or Black. Let's talk about Red or Black. Did it come back last week? It came back the same night as The X Factor, didn't it? And this is a Simon Cowell idea.
And ITV Studios.
And ITV Studios. It's a co-production. How did it perform last Saturday? What were the ratings for Red or Black?
It peaked at 5.5, I think. It's in two parts wrapped around X Factor. So there's a part 1 and a part 2.
And is that good enough? Is that a good rating?
Sorry?
Is that a good enough rating? 5 million for Red or Black?
That was a very good rating. The early show didn't do as well. So, but you know, that was on at, I think, 6:30. And that really was.
It was up against Indiana Jones as well.
Sure, I'll come to you in a second. Why did you call it a disaster?
Oh, I meant the first series. Well, I just think because when you've got Anton Deck, you've got Simon Cowell, ITV Studios co-production, you know, it's a big blockbuster thing. It looked very expensive, and it was, you know, cost of thousands, all this stuff. And a format where people are winning millions of pounds, you'd think it's going to be a thing that would capture the public's imagination and be a massive runaway hit. But I do think, again, the mistake was the stripping across the week thing, because it was such a repetitive thing. And of course, they had the problem of some nasty bloke winning, you know, which took some of the shine off it.
It did do brilliantly on the Saturday and the Saturday. It did really, really well.
It feels like a Saturday night show. I don't see why it would be stripped across the week. That was just bizarre to me. That it was.
Do you like it as a show?
I mean, you know, I thought the best things about it were inevitably Anton Deck, who are, of course, astonishingly good. I mean, I think it's, you know, I think it's fine. There were things about it that were just weird. You know, you're talking about the actual nitty-gritty detail of it. There were just odd moments where, you know, why are they doing it that way? There were just things about it that felt peculiar to me. But, you know, I think it's a great idea. It's just difficult to kind of make it work perfectly. But I think this series is much better immediately. It's already
we've made a lot of changes. We've made changes, and you know, I think it still feels to me, it feels still a big, ambitious Saturday night show with big stunts and things that are happening, and you're hoping that you're going to entertain the audience and give them, I think, a fantastic end to the night with the final game.
Yeah.
I think this series is better than the first series, and I think that's a relevant point. You know, you've learned something from your first series, so you can improve on the second series. The difficulty for producers or commissioners is the spotlight that these shows are immediately under. You know, it's very difficult to make your
And that was hard, you know.
Do I like it?
I'm sorry, Mark.
No, it's not my most favourite show. You know.
You don't like Red or Black?
I think it's ambitious. I think it's worth doing, but I'm not sure I would have commissioned it.
Why not?
I don't think there's enough endeavour for the contestants. You know, I like some more rigour. I like to see them earning their money more than they do in Red and Black.
Elaine? Mark wouldn't have commissioned
I would
that
have
show.
commissioned it. I did commission it.
You did commission it.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it is actually quite a different show, this series, to the stripped version of it. And I think it's actually a jollier, it's a more fun show. And I think, again, the production values are fantastic. I mean, I think, you know, we should pay tribute to the producers of all these shows on Saturday night, you know, that sort of staying in now and watching BBC One or ITV1 on a Saturday night is like the new going out, because actually the production values that you get from these shows, you know, they look amazing. The lighting rigs on these shows and the sound quality and the orchestras and the bands and the music, it's kind of, you know, into your, you know, right into your sitting room. You know, we really have kind of started producing really high-class entertainment, I think.
And most of that done live. You know, you look at Strictly Come Dancing. You know, that is a live show, week in and week out, with wonderful production values. And you know, the same with X Factor. You know, it's the technical ability of our directors, lighting directors, our producers is absolutely superb.
And I think what Red or Black has done is sort of supersize the game show, and you know, it's brought those production values to kind of large-scale games, and you know, it feels like real kind of event television.
Just one other point, we mentioned at the beginning of the discussion the Olympics, and you were saying maybe one of the reasons there's just a slight dip in the X Factor is because there's still a sort of an Olympics lag, if you like.
Well, no, I just meant that leading up to it, obviously the Olympics, everybody's been watching the Olympics, so there's sort of sense of build up to X Factor, I think.
What did you put out during, was ITV even on during the Olympics?
Yes, it was. And actually, Coronation Street did really well during the Olympics. We did quite a lot of original factual. We didn't do any entertainment, actually. We didn't do any original drama, but we did do quite a lot of new factual that did reasonably well. As I say, Coronation Street was on very good form. Daytime did quite well.
Must have been quite a challenge, though, to schedule.
Yeah, of course it was. But look, it's never going to happen again in our lifetime. You know, it was a one-off event, and you know, it was. I was watching it along with everyone else. It was brilliant, but you know, it's a one-off thing. It's not going to happen again.
Was there a sort of feeling in commercial television that it was something of an enormous unfair advantage that the BBC had?
Sorry?
The BBC had this sort of unfair advantage that it owned the Olympics, that it could trail other shows constantly.
Yes. No, I don't think so. I mean, I think, you know, the BBC's always had the Olympics. We've, you know, since the 1950s. It comes around 4 times a year, and, you know, it happened to be in London this year, so it was huge, but it doesn't normally do those kinds of figures, and it won't do those figures again, I don't expect. Okay,
let's have a quick chat just about other stuff that's coming up in the future of Saturday night television. Mark, what has the BBC got coming up?
We've got a new big entertainment show that we're going to announce later today, or BBC One are going to announce it.
Now.
I can't.
Yeah, MediaGuardian Edinburgh International Television Festival on stage.
I've given it's Danny Cohen's
This is
gift.
the entertainment session.
I can't. But it's very different, it's very new. I can't do it. I can't. Nothing.
You're not going to tell us now.
I can't. But it's very exciting. You'll know about it soon. Okay. I can't.
The audience has spoken.
You've got 2 hours. But it's very different, you know.
It's roughly what it's about. Is it?
It's a game show. It's a game show, and it's a very different area for us. I mean, we are trying to do different things, as is Elaine. You know, that is the task that we face. It's the shows we've got are fantastic, and they're working, so that's brilliant. But we need to have an eye on the future. You know, and we tried something last January, which was The Magicians, and we did 2 series of that. But
why did you drop that?
The first series did really well, and we're very pleased with it, and it did well enough for a second series. But it was trying to do something different, which was Magic hadn't been on Saturday night, BBC One, for 17 years. Let's give it a go. And the first series, it's interesting actually, because the first series was pre-recorded with Lenny Henry, and it did well. It sort of averaged, I think, 7.5 million. So we thought, right, let's try and build on that. Let's try and make more of an event. Let's make it live. And that was a mistake. You know, I think it's really difficult to do live magic. And so you're constantly learning. You know, it doesn't always have to be live, you know, to have that feeling of event. So, but no, so we've got something new and different coming up. Obviously, we've got Strictly. We've got a very exciting celebrity lineup of Strictly. So, and we've got, you know, other things on Saturday night. It's not just Peak. We've got a Richard Hammond Hidden Camera show. We're doing a pilot with Mrs. Brown for Saturday night. You know, so we're trying to do new and different things.
From the point of view the programme makes of The Magicians, they might say, okay, it was a mistake to do it live. Can't we just go back to doing it pre-recorded?
I think magic is one of those things that Yeah, there's only so many magic tricks.
Okay.
And I think another reason was, there's only so many different ways you can levitate someone. So I think we'd run out of ideas. Perhaps we should get
Presumably there's
Pudsey.
only one way of levitating.
Well, but perhaps if we got Pudsey to levitate someone, that might work.
Elaine, what have you got coming up at
I think he's
ITV?
under exclusive
I
contract.
think you'll find he's on Strictly. That's an exclusive.
Strictly Dog Dancing.
It's actually on Strictly, though.
Now, there's a show.
Actually, it might be on Strictly, might actually.
Believe you me, we've been pitched at Strictly Dog Dancing. We've also been pitched a lot of celebrity cycling since the Olympics.
Oh, yeah.
Celebrity cycling in
We've had celebrity rowing.
celebrity synchronised swimming. Have you had that?
Oh, we had that a couple of years ago. Do you remember that?
No,
pitch,
it's
don't
come
you?
round again.
Right.
Have you? So you've been pitched celebrity rowing since the Olympics?
Yes.
And we've definitely celebrity cycling and celebrity synchronised swimming.
And why have you turned that down, Elaine?
Well, she hasn't yet.
No.
No, it's coming. It's going to be announced later on this afternoon.
What have you got coming up you can tell us about?
We've got a new Dom Jolly hidden camera show starting next week, which we're excited about. We've got Take Me Out coming back in the autumn, which has become part of the ITV, a new entertainment show that's become, now feels like a regular part of the ITV furniture. We've got a new game show starting in the new year.
What is it?
Prize Island, it's called.
Oh, yeah, Xander's doing that, isn't he?
Yeah,
Armstrong,
Sandra Armstrong is doing that. So yeah, we've, as Mark says, you sort of, you try a lot of things and some things work and some things don't. And it's all in a very exposed place and it gets a lot of attention but you have to be, you have to be realistic about these things.
Siobhan, you are leaving Psycho.
Yeah.
That's a big decision.
Yeah.
And in October, you're joining ITV Studios.
Yeah.
So what is the brief you've been given there? What is your main job there?
I think it's going to be, it's the new stuff. That's what I'm there to do. Obviously, they've got some amazing shows already that they do, but the most important thing for me is to create the next generation of shows. That's what I want to do.
Is there a particular type of show that you want to create?
Somebody once said to me, to work in television, have a great memory. And I think that's always something. It's like to go forwards, go backwards as well, to look at what's happened in the past. And so I'll be doing a bit of that. But I want to create shows that that ultimately will entertain Saturday night. That's
Looking
what I'm
back, it's
there to
interesting.
do.
I mean, I guess that's, these talent shows are versions, really, aren't they, of shows that existed?
Well, a takeaway
20,
that we
30 years
created,
ago.
that was like, that was an old show that we redid, and in a way, it felt like it was an old-fashioned show that we gave new value to and new life. And
Great.
yeah, so.
All right, well, good luck with that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we should do a couple of questions. Let's put the lights up a second. Does anyone have a question that they would like to ask any of our panel? No, appears to be the answer. You have to be quite brave to go first. Does anyone ask anything? Boy, just finally from you, do you think Saturday Night Telly is in a healthy place at the moment?
Yeah, I think it's bizarre. When you think about it, I don't know of any other, well, certainly not America. In America, if you watch Saturday Night TV, it's literally all the crap that the networks commission, they dump on Saturday night, and hardly anyone watches it. It's a weird and kind of incredible thing that the country stays in to watch TV on a Saturday night. It's quite astonishing, and I think it is, without wanting to sound too cruelly, down to how entertaining they are. They are incredibly entertaining, these programs. I think it is. I think the huge big challenge is finding what they just need. I think both channels, ITV, need one more brilliant format, a new thing that they can show. When the X Factor isn't on and when Strictly isn't on and The Voice isn't on. And I think that's the holy grail. And I'm fascinated to know what that's going to be. I'm also fascinated to know who's going to be on the panel of The Voice next year. Mark.
Who's going to be on the panel of The Voice next year, Mark?
Not Pudsey.
It will change, though, won't it?
Are you going to change? Are you going to change any of the judges?
No, we don't plan to change any of the judges. We're having a conversation with the coaches, Richard, and we don't plan to change any of them. And we're having really positive conversations. As you can imagine, they're busy people. It's all about diary, but it's. I'd be very surprised if there are any changes.
Okay, great. Thank you very much indeed. I think Elaine and I are back on stage about half an hour, aren't we, Elaine? Involved in a pitching session, which we probably horridly need to go and read our briefs for. But thank you very much for coming, and please put your hands together for our panel.